this is Atlas's second session, and I'm just going to start teaching him what the click means. So I have a bucket of grain in my hands right now. He's still very weary of me being over here next to him. So I'm just using a bucket because he's definitely not going to eat in my hand. But just when he faces me like that, I'm going to click, and then I just toss him the food. So I had to mute this video because my dog's barking in the background because he really wants to chase him. So there's going to be a click. I'll tell you when the click is, but I'm going to click when he looked at me, and then right immediately afterward, I'm tossing the food into the bucket. And so I don't use a handheld clicker because I find that more difficult. So I'm just using a tongue click, and they'll eventually get used to that. So he's just going to leave after he's eaten. That's fine. I'm just going to stay there. I'm going to kind of put a little pressure on his hind end, but I want to always be careful that I don't get stuck between him and the fence. So he comes over, click, toss in some grain. So I'm using some grain here to just give him a little bit more incentive to come to me. And he was eating the hay out of my hand in the last session, but I just really want to pair the click with something strong. So there he stayed. So I clicked again and then tossed the grain in. So I'm tossing it in because he won't stay if I'm too close. So he's staying again. So I click and feed again. Because if I step any closer, it'll just push him off the bowl. So I'm throwing it in there, but he's a little afraid of the sound and stuff that it makes. So he is turning his head away. That's his first sign saying that he's uncomfortable. And he's looking away from me. There he blew his nose and came back. So I'm going to toss in some more hay or more grain and click right before that. So I'm just clicking him for staying still. So I'm still aware that, see, I barely took a step there and he left. He didn't leave. He took a step away. But I'm just going to click and reward him. So he didn't leave completely. That's why I clicked there and tossed some more grain in. And I want to reward him as much as I possibly can. So he's staying, click reward. So that I kind of entice him and teach him to stay here versus just leave every second. I kind of move closer. So, but I noticed that he was starting to leave when I had moved my right foot forward. So it's still in that same position. I haven't gotten any closer. So he is showing me he's turning his head away. He's kind of looking off, kind of take that step away. He's nervous about that. And so that's why I'm not moving any closer to him. But especially with these Mustangs, they will tell you, all horses tell you what they're thinking, but they are very subtle and very sensitive. So you really have to pay attention to your body language and what you're doing, and just your presence is pressure. And that was one of the really big things that you don't realize until you actually get one. Especially if you're used to domestics, because that's usually not a thing for them at all. They're totally fine with people. It's usually opposite. It's usually a positive thing. So just rock my hips forward there and just to kind of barely see. And he kind of felt that presence. He stayed and then he decided to leave. But I'm just going to put a little pressure and be like, hey, can you come back? I'm just leaning forward a little bit, waving my hand a little bit. I'm just like, hey, can you come back a little bit? I'm just kind of set it up so that him facing me and being near me is the best thing. So he faced me and kind of came toward me. So I'm going to click and toss in some more grain into his bowl. But I just want, first off, to him associate me with something good and positive, so I barely move my hand up there to kind of get some sweat off, and he immediately picks his head up. So I want him to associate me, and he's staying, so I click and feed. So he picked his head up, but he didn't leave. So I want to reward anytime he's thinking of staying and facing me. But I'm just trying to pair little subtle things. So I'm not going to click for him, looking at me and then taking a step toward me, because that's too far advanced for him. I just want him staying. Click, feet. So he stayed. He didn't leave. He picked his head up versus moving his feet away. So he's still thinking about it, but he hasn't gone all the way to that step. So I just need a good place to start with him and to pair my presence with food and then the click with food. So then he'll understand that when I click, then something good's going to happen. But even me just I had a bug on me, and then it kind of worried him, so I kept doing it. And then he was like, oh, that's too much pressure for me. And he had to walk away and leave. So I just kept doing it until he walked away and stopped moving. And he was like, okay, that's not a big deal. So I was going to put a little pressure on his hindquarters. I'm yelling at the dog here. Little pressure to see if he can face me. There we go. I back up, click, and toss him some grain. So this is just basic grain. He's coming in with his hip a little bit, so I'm saying, hey, not like that. Good. And then reward. So he came up, and then he kind of came up with his hips angled toward me, and I was like, that's a defensive maneuver. So he wants to come up, but he's like, I want this grain, but I might have to defend myself against you. So I was like, no, let's move your hips over. He moved him over. I clicked, and he came up just fine. But he's ready to leave. Like he just picks up his head and shoves his shoulders over. So I'm going to ask for his hindquarters again yelling at the dog. And there we go. I'll lean back a bit, take a step back. So he's very nervous. He wants the grain, but he's afraid of me being near him. I want him to get used to just eating the grain. I'm not going to attack you when your head's down and you're eating. That's not what we're doing. So I'm just going to ask him to put a little pressure, ask him to come back. He comes right back. So I'm going to... Like, I want to throw the grain in there, but he's afraid. And I don't want to scare him by throwing the grain in there because that's not necessarily a reward. I want to reward him, not scare him more. So step back. That was perfect. That's really nice. So I click him, and then I'm just going to pour the rest I think I have in my bucket in here because he actually rolled around and has been facing me, which is really good. He didn't come in at his hips at all. Very good. Wait till he looks at me. I'm going to click and give him the rest of my food here. And he came right up, which is really good. But you just got to kind of remember every little move we make with these guys. So he's getting there.